Welcome to the Political Trenches, local government at work. It's all about municipal leadership over the last few weeks, and today is no different. But today is a bit different for our co-host because we are going to be discussing dual leadership. And to join us to do that is Strategic Steps Atlantic Vice President Craig Pollett, who is filling in on behalf of Ian McCormick because he had some travel issues heading back from Newfoundland and Labrador to Alberta. So Craig, I was going to call you Ian there, Craig, but Craig, how are you? How's it been?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm feeling very Ian today, so this shouldn't be a problem.
Oh, that's what you say now, but just censor
Mhm.
yourself. Just try to be as Ian as possible for the next 45 minutes, and we will make sure we enter the political trenches nice and neatly for you, okay?
Excellent.
So, our first story is from CBC Newfoundland and Labrador. Leaders in two of central Newfoundland's largest communities hope the surprise resignation of Premier Andrew Furey doesn't complicate their plans for their communities. In Grand Falls, Windsor, the town and province are working on a new community center, a multi sports venue, and two ice services, a pool, and other recreational space. It's still in its early stages, and Mayor Barry Manuel hopes a change in leadership doesn't mean a change in plans. Now, about 100 kilometers east in Gander, officials have been working with the provincial government on several key issues, including concerns over plans to move the provincial air ambulance out of the central location. Mayor Percy Farwell says Furey has taken a position that Gander will have an important role in the new integrated ambulance system. Quoting, I have to have confidence that the administration that he led has come to certain realizations and has understandings of issues under his leadership that they perhaps wouldn't have otherwise, he said. Both mayors agree that the outgoing premier was good to work with. Now, Craig, this is in your backyard, so let's start
It is.
there. In your previous life, you've worked with municipalities in Newfoundland and Labrador when there has been those changes at that provincial leadership. How do municipalities work with a provincial government that sees changes at the top on so many occurrences?
So, I mean, it really depends. In this case, this is a change of leadership within the Liberal Party. The main administration is not changing. Andrew Furey certainly had a presence and a very distinct way of leadership, a distinct approach to leadership. And he was very hands-on with decisions across the board in that administration. But the fundamental direction the government is going in, I don't think is going to change, given that at this point, for now anyway, we're just talking about a new leader for the party. There's two gentlemen who are the official candidates right now. I don't see either of them making significant policy or directional changes. I really don't. Especially when, as you alluded to, we're going into a provincial election later this year, and the Liberals are doing okay right now. I don't think they want to rock the boat too much and go, you know, make a 90-degree turn in one policy direction or another, throw voters off, and then sort of mess things up for their election potential in the fall. That said, I spent 22 years as CEO of Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador. So over that arc, I saw a lot of governments change. I saw a lot of leaders change. And there's no doubt municipalities have to adjust, foot on the brake, foot back on the gas, depending on who the leader is. Because, and in this was one of those cases, the leader coming in, Andrew Furey, didn't have a lot of experience with municipalities. He's a surgeon and comes from a political family, comes from a political background, but mainly federal provincial. So municipalities had to spend a bit of time getting to know him so that he could get to know them and understand how municipalities work. And they've got to do that every time a new premier comes in because you don't know what sort of, they might have experience, but you don't know what understanding they have of how a municipality operates.
Now, as a keen observer of provincial and federal and also municipal politics, I know that Newfoundland and Labrador has the tendency to change its premiers as much as goes to the election, it seems like. And those changes come from internal changes. I'm thinking of
Hmm.
Danny Williams leaving and then Kathy Dunderdale coming in. And then I believe there was another one right after Kathy before Dwight Ball became premier.
There
And
was.
then Dwight Ball stepped down and Andrew Furey took over, and now a new person will be taking over. How did municipalities navigate those sort of changes? Because municipalities are constant. You know that there's always going to be a 4 year mandate or a 3 year mandate, depending on what province we're talking about. When you're working with the province, which the municipalities do on a regular basis, is it hard to pause projects when municipalities need to get them off the ground as soon as possible? Because property taxes are involved, raising funds for those projects, which we have seen a massive increase over the last few years, could impact the municipality's ability to even go forward with the project when things are being put on hold for partisan politics reasons.
It's a massive issue. And in fact, so this fall, when the actual provincial election happens, will be an interesting case study to watch. In the past, we've had real issues in this province with what they call the caretaker period or caretaker mode. So if there's an election happening, the tradition has been that major policy decisions don't get made, major spending decisions don't get made. Government has to keep moving. The provincial government has to keep doing things. Roads don't stop getting paved and that sort of thing just because there's an election. But major policy changes or major expenditures don't get decided on. What we've noticed in Newfoundland and Labrador in the last decade or so is that for municipal projects, it could be an arena, it could be just funding for a culvert, it could be funding for road paving or whatever. All that stuff started to just stop. So as soon as the writ was dropped, everything stopped. And I mean, that's an issue everywhere. If your projects get stalled like that, then the election is going to be a month or 2 months or whatever it's going to be. That's a significant chunk of time. In Newfoundland and Labrador, it's an even bigger issue because our construction season is very short and merciless. Like you start getting in October, forget it. Just stop. You're not going to get anything done. So has been a big challenge. And I'm looking like right now, while the leadership is changing, I don't know that it's that big a deal. I am keeping a keen eye on the fall when the provincial election happens to see have we learned any lessons here? Because there was a commitment from the province a few years ago to ease off on that. Say, yeah, we understand, if a municipal government has gotten their funding and they've signed contracts with contractors, with construction firms, they can't just stop that because we don't want to send them, a phased payment or something like that. So we'll see. It is something that they got to keep in mind for sure.
We will be watching that, and I'm assuming you and I will probably be chatting during that provincial election because we're planning on being out there for at least 2 weeks during that campaign to try to hear what municipal leaders are going to be wanting to their next government to address. And now we're going to head to our second story, which comes from CBC New Brunswick. Another of New Brunswick's new municipal council has become embroiled in drama and bitter conflict. Strait Shores lies along the Northumberland Strait and includes the former village of Port Elgin and smaller communities out to the Confederation Bridge. The sprawling community was amalgamated in 2023 as part of the local governance reform put in by the previous government. But the Strait Shores Council began to unravel this year after a new member was elected in a January by-election. And I am just pausing. I'm going to pause right there because my computer froze, and I'm just going to pick up from where I just lost there. So I'm just going to go back. But the Strait Shores Council began to unravel this year after a new member was elected in a January by-election. What followed were resignations, sanctions, heated allegations, and tense public meetings where angry residents spoke out in support of the new councillor, saying he was being unfairly punished. Andy McGregor, a retiree who took up school bus driving to stay busy, said he ran in the by-election after attending council meetings and feeling local governments needed more structure. At his second meeting on February 10th, McGregor introduced a dozen transparency motions. Among other things, he called for posting previous financial statements, requiring a public tender when a municipal asset is sold, and imposing a deadline for posting meeting minutes. Mayor Jason Stokes resigned February 14th and a blistering 3-page letter attacking McGregor. Stokes called McGregor the quote, town bully, end quote, and accused him of having intense hatred for municipal staff. McGregor's motion came from a quote, need to control the staff, end quote, saying Stokes, who wanted an apology. When CBC first requested a copy of Stokes' letter, CAO Donna Hipditch said it could be found on a local Facebook group where it was posted anonymously. Asked again for an official copy, Hipditch refused to provide one until it was tabled at the next council meeting. Soon after, two other councillors, Stacey Jones and Tanya Haynes, also resigned, only to then change their minds. Hipditch would not provide copies of the resignation letters, saying it would be quote unquote redundant after they had returned to their roles. Craig, this is not the first, but hopefully it is the last municipality in New Brunswick that we're going to be chatting about around this conflict. And it has put New Brunswick municipalities under a microscope when it comes to conflicts on their councils. How do municipalities and their council ensure that cooler heads prevail when it comes to what is best for the community?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do. And we can talk about the things they can do. I think it's also going to be important to talk about what the heck is happening underneath all of this to cause this concern and sort of virulence and sort of anger that's coming up. But in terms of what they can do, transparency is a big issue with municipalities. One of the things to consider when it comes to smaller municipalities like this one in New Brunswick is transparency actually takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of administrative time and effort. And most of these municipalities don't have a lot of staff. So they're trying to keep up with, and I'll reference one of the underlying issues now, they're trying to keep up with a bunch of new rules. Everything has changed in New Brunswick since the municipal restructuring. And this is one of those areas, geographically, I mean, where I think you've probably got a small municipality that has now been merged with a group of communities that weren't municipalities at all. And you've got a lot of people who are now in this community, have elected councillors to a municipal council, but probably haven't lived in a municipality before. Certainly not in New Brunswick. So the population is coming to grips with, how does this work? How do councils work? Why can't I just walk in and get whatever information I want? Why does a council have the right to do what they did? And you've probably got councillors who haven't been on a council before. You've got people who've never been in municipal government before. And you've got a very small staff trying to support that whole process. So we just did a session in Newfoundland around how to keep anger and hostility and incivility at bay. And the stuff you want to do up front is all around making sure everybody gets information way in advance. Everybody understands why you're doing the things you're doing, the fact that you have the authority to do those things. So really good communications. It's also about making it clear with signage, with the way you read your agenda, the way you run your meetings, that certain behaviors are acceptable and certain behaviors are not acceptable. And you can be passionate and you can be concerned, you can be angry, but you can't be abusive. And that's a big ask for somebody who, and I don't know the mayor who resigned, I don't know this person. I don't know what his background is. But that is a big ask in a small community when people and I don't know if you saw the images on the CBC story, when they say residents went to a meeting and demanded answers, they were standing 6 feet from council. The council meets in what looks to be the front office.
I was going to say, it looks like the lobby of the front office.
Absolutely. So you've got maybe 20 people all angry at you, standing arm's length away from you, raised voices, demanding answers, and you're really not sure how this works anyway. And you're just learning. You're learning how a council operates and how a meeting operates. That's a tough situation.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask the second question is this just growing pains? Because I'm not trying to pick on New Brunswick here for a second, but there's a lot of stories like this coming out of New Brunswick right now
Yeah.
where there's been that conflict on council because when you take a bunch of municipalities and unincorporated parts of the province and put them all together and say, okay, work it out for yourself and try to make your community move forward, there's going to be growing pains and there's going to be
Yep.
challenges of what we should be doing and what we can't do because the government says we aren't allowed to do that. But there are some things that the municipality can do, like posting agenda minutes in a timely fashion on the website, putting like there's things that the councillor McGregor did ask for that I would not find suspicious, but
Yeah.
the growing pains of how you go about and ask for those things are completely different or accuse someone of not being transparent when really you're still trying to learn the ropes.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that happening. I think you've hit the nail on the head that, and I think there's two things going on. One is the growing pains. So everybody involved in this situation, whether they're on council, working for the municipality, or a resident in this municipality, they're all learning how this works as they go through it,
Yeah.
right? And so residents don't necessarily know what to expect. The mayor, the councils are dealing with these situations for the first time. And these would be challenging situations for a council that's got a lot of veterans on it, that's been doing this for a while. Let's make that clear. And I agree. I think some of the new councilors' requests, these things don't seem like they should be engendering this much anger.
Yeah.
They seem fairly straightforward. I think the challenge here is that in this case, he came in hot. He came to his first meeting with 12 resolutions or 12 motions, all of which it seems like, again, to your point, he wasn't just saying, I'd like us to be more transparent. He was accusing them of not being transparent. And for what reason? There's always the implicit sort of, you're hiding something thing. The other thing that's going on is, I think, just generally speaking, and we talked about this at the session here in St. John's recently. Um, as a society, we seem to have lost our patience with institutions. People are ready to get angry right now,
Yeah.
and they want instant action. They want, even if they don't understand how the institution works, they don't care. It's not their problem. You're not responding to me, therefore I'm angry at you. So if you can imagine, the new counselor is feeling that pressure. The staff are feeling that pressure. The existing counselor feeling that pressure. So I think there's two layers of going, what's happening here. There is absolutely, you've got some new people trying to figure out how this all works, trying to do the best they can. And then you've got residents who, I think it's fair to say, probably expected this to all be running perfectly right away, and they're upset.
If our friend Ian McCormick was here, he would say the story is never what it's all actually about. So there's
It's never
always an
about what it's about. Yep,
exactly. Um,
absolutely.
And our final story comes from CBC Winnipeg. The city of Winnipeg's largest union says it's filed a grievance against the city after the mayor indicated he's looking to call all staff back to the municipal office. Mayor Scott Gillingham told business leaders during the annual State of the City luncheon last month he wants employees who've been allowed to work from home as part of a flexible workplace program introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic to return full time to the office. Quote, we're in the process right now of hiring a new chief administrative officer for the city of Winnipeg, end quote. Gillingham said at the luncheon and added, quote, I'm going to be making it clear to the individual my expectation as mayor is that our staff are back in the office 5 days a week, end quote. Now, the president of QP Local 500, which represents about 5,000 public service workers, including clerical and maintenance staff, said after the mayor's speech, the union has filed a policy grievance over the issue. Quote, it's a bad idea. The mayor needs to do his homework on this one, end quote, the president said. In October, interim chief administrative officer Sherwood Amherstberg sent out an email to city staff announcing people in the program would have to come to the workplace for a minimum of 3 days a week, adding it would be continuing despite some concerns it would be canceled completely. Craig, as more and more businesses begin to ask staff to come back to the office full time, is it not in the right of municipalities to do the same with their employees?
I suppose they're right, absolutely. Again, I think there's go back to Ian's quote, it's never about what it's about. And I think some of that's happening here too. Um, I've seen in lots of urban centers across the country the push from the business community to have provincial staff come back to the office, municipal staff come back to the office, because it's seen as an economic driver. People are in the downtown again, they're shopping, they're eating, they're whatever. And I think that's probably what drives a lot of this. I'm not sure, and I don't know the situation in a lot of detail. I'm not sure it would be about the level of service that businesses are receiving from the municipality. I think it's probably driven more from we need warm bodies in the downtown core so that the place doesn't look dead, essentially, and restaurants are going to do better, et cetera. And I can appreciate all of that. I think the challenge is, even though working from home was a response to the pandemic, and all the literature is saying this, it ain't going away. Now that it's here, it's there's a big chunk of the population who just prefer to work that way. And there's been lots of studies that say that it is, despite what we were hearing from one of the city studies, that it does actually improve productivity. I think giving people an option is important, but my main concern in this story, to be quite honest, is, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is it the mayor's role to be discussing the working operations of the municipality? That's the CAO's gig, man. Like and I think he was very careful in how he phrased it. When we have a new CAO coming on, I will be letting it known, I think he said, that this is our preference. And councils do that all the time. But the fact is, councils decide what, administration, senior leadership teams decide how. And where people put their bum when they're doing their job is very much on the how side of things. So I'm intrigued as to how that conversation rolls out.
Again, if our friend Ian McCormick was here, he'd be saying, who's truly driving the grader in this
Yes.
scenario? Because
Yes.
I agree. Mayors, council are there to govern, not administer, but they're there to govern what the administration does. Now, hypothetically, the mayor is right in his ability to say, this is who I want to hire, someone who is going to ask people to come back. But once that person is hired and they don't do that, then they have the right to fire them, but you need a majority of council members to vote to fire them. But they have all the right to say, this is who we're going to be looking for. I think it's a very hard line that he's walked. I'm not sure if he did it in the correct way. I think the union has the right to do what they have done and say that
Yep.
this is not going to work, but the mayor has the right to say what he wants in the next CAO, and that's what he did. He voiced his opinion, and we will see how this unfolds if it does happen and they all move back to 5 days a week. Because I know that there are many municipalities who are in the same boat, who are asking their staff members to start coming back, and there is pushback from the staff. And they do not have unions to back them up. So, in that case, there will be some people getting laid off, but I don't think it's the mayor who's directing it, or if they are, councils moving a motion to ask administration to move back, and that's how they could potentially do it. So there's a lot of gray areas here, but I am cautious of time, and we are going to head over to our discussion with Kelly Lloyd, the CAO for the town of Milk River, Alberta, and the village of Warner, Alberta. Welcome to the Political Trenches Local Government at Work. Today we are continuing our journey in the municipal leadership realm, and today we're discussing dual leadership. To help us do that, we are speaking with Kelly Lloyd. Grounded in governance, Kelly's focus is on moving the needle towards sustainable service delivery for municipalities. Her biggest professional accomplishment to date was the designing and building of all administrative departments as the senior administrative officer for the first community-owned fiber network in Canada, ONET. 3 years ago in 2022, Kelly became the CAO of not one, but two communities in southern Alberta, the town of Milk River and the village of Warner. So, with that, welcome to the show and the political trenches, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.
So, Kelly, to kick off the line of questions, I'm going to just start with a simple one. Can you walk us through how you became the CAO of not just one municipality, but two municipalities in southern Alberta?
So, me going along at that time, I hit it at time just right in the fact that there was already my predecessor in the dual role. The years that Milk River and the village of Warner began sharing a CAO, I believe they are before my time by a couple of years. So at that time, I'm not 100% what the sorry. There needed to be, some dual a sharing of an administrative role due to some challenges that the village of Warner was foreseeing. And also it was timely in the fact that the town of Milk River was looking for a CAO. So I believe a pitch was made to both councils and both councils agreed. And thus the dual shared role for the CAO came into fruition. And I was fortunate enough to be looking for a small community to be closer to my children and my my grandbaby was born at that time. So yes, it was, I had a little bit of a selfish reason for coming down to the south.
So, Kelly, you say that there was already discussions happening between, or at least there was need identified between the two municipalities. Was there a formal process or an agreement between the two municipalities to share the CAO before you took on the role, or did that merge sort of as you moved into the positions?
I can't really speak to what arrangement was made prior to me being here. But for me coming on board, it was an arrangement that the town of Milk River would be the lead managing partner on this process. And so they're the ones that do the full payroll, the contract management, et cetera, and then bill the services out to the village of Warner for their portion. And in that contract, just stipulates how many hours per week each municipality receives.
Right. And I've met a lot of CAOs in my time. I think it's fair to say most CAOs, I don't want to say struggle. It's in the forefront of their mind all the time, how they're going to deal with the council they have, and how do you balance the political of council and the operational needs of the municipality, that sort of thing. You've got two councils that I'm going to say manage in a very diplomatic way. How do you divide your time and your attention between not just the councils, but between the needs of two separate communities, two separate operations?
It is a balancing act, absolutely. To come in and try to learn about a municipality, get yourself familiar with the staff, the processes, the projects that are ongoing. It was a straight up learning curve that I lived in my son's holiday trailer at the campground for the first, March to November of my first year. So it was interesting because, yes, I needed to learn about both municipalities, but I also felt like I was on secondment because I was camping. So it was a different dynamic. And just the more that you work with individuals, the more you get to learn about their personalities, what are the things that interest, what's their passion, and working on how to communicate with them. To talk about dividing my time, definitely tricky in the beginning, and I'm not going to lie, it's still tricky. But I had to, and I forget at what point within my first year, to say to both councils, so like Milk River, I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In Warner, I work Tuesday, Thursday. And so I had to try and put some boundaries around. And I know that it's not going to be this way all the time. There are emerging needs that happen and emergencies that do crop up. So it's not like I'm not available, but I needed to try to put some structure. So I said to both councils, this is kind of what I need. You know, if you are going to ask me on a day that's not my day with you, I'm going to have to wait and answer you that day that I'm with you or working for you. You know, if I work on one day and then there are questions in the evening, but they're not emergencies, I need to wait till I'm actually back at work physically for your community before I answer. And it's been, as far as I know, it's been going okay. It definitely helped alleviate a lot of a fast tracking of things that were happening. It just was going too fast and too much all at once, right? As far as individuals and residents, businesses of the communities, it's also, I think, taken a little bit getting used to. I think it was positive in the fact that my predecessor sort of set the stage already. However, people's perception is their reality, no matter where you are and what you're doing. The second thing is their issue that they want dealt with right now. They're not going to wait until the CAO is in the office the next day or the next available time, right? So you have to deal with those and try to balance it out as best as you can. You know, I jokingly say at times, you know, I can be in Milk River and I will say to my teammates, oh, I'm sure I'm working in Milk River today, because there will be calls that come from the Village of Warner and vice versa, or people that will physically come to the office. So I think both councils have also been extremely generous in the fact that they are watching this balance, and they know that there is going to be times where, even though it's my day here, it's not necessarily going to work that way, just paper wise. And for the most part, keeping them separate that way has been working. Just has its little quirks every now and again.
How do you, I mean, you know, you've got your operational role. You're running the municipality, council decides what, you decide how. But you also have a role in making sure that you're advocating for each of these municipalities if they want to talk to the provincial government or whatever. How do you balance that? How do you maintain the impartiality and the fairness in advocating for the needs of each separate community, even though you're one CAO, or does it come up very much?
I guess maybe in some cases, like for right now, the town of Milk River has water is top of mind for the town of Milk River.
Hmm.
Our water supply comes from Montana. So we've had an interesting past year. And with that works also with, we're working on temporary water supply or a permanent supplemental water supply that now brings in the Village of Warner. So it's, I really don't know, or I can't really describe how. It's just that I do. And, you know, there are times in both councils where I have said, okay, well, I'm taking off this hat and I'm putting on this hat. This is what's happening down here. So I try to be very open and transparent when I am discussing things with council, so that they know which hat I am wearing when we're talking about certain things. As far as advocacy goes, I love briefing notes. So, I mean, I could write them till the cows come home, and I have no problem differentiating that and the roles. And for the most part, a lot of municipalities in Alberta are in the same boat. So when one is speaking for one, it actually is speaking for many.
You do have two separate teams. You've got two separate councils. Do you have any particular leadership strategies that you've been using? You just talked about, you know, being really open with your communications. But what other tools are you using to make sure that everybody's getting the attention they need from the person at the top or in the middle between council and staff? And related to that, how do you avoid burnout, or how do you avoid just getting overwhelmed if there's an emergency in both towns at the same time, or something's blowing up, not literally, in both towns at the same time? How do you, is there a way that you manage that?
Who says I'm avoiding it?
Good point. Good point.
Um, it is, it is challenging. It is
Yeah.
challenging. Um, I'm a high gold, so if you've ever done colors, you know that I like to have things, up in a row.
Right.
Some days, yes, it can be very overwhelming. It depends on the demands of the council. It depends on the demands of the community that then therefore through council come to me. There are times, yes, I'm done. I have
Yeah.
to cut it off and I've got to just not be in and I've got to take time for myself. So, as far as that goes, I'm very much an inclusive individual. I want to collaborate with my team. There are times where some things need to be top down, but you know what? We're all in this together, and I'm a cog in
Mhm.
the wheel, just like they're a cog in the wheel. My job is no different than anybody else's. We're all here for the same purpose. And if we can all work together, two heads are better than one. That's how I like to work. And because I'm only here part-time in both communities, I may miss something over here. So I need to include everyone. And being small communities, everybody talks to everybody. So there are conversations happening all the time around me. I may not be part of them, and that's okay. I don't mind. I work on fact, I work on evidence, I don't work on hearsay. So it's making sure, and there are times, please know, the communication can be lacking sometimes, just depends on what's going on. So I try to keep the both teams communicating with both teams to keep things moving along or to help remedy any situation that comes up.
It's so good to hear you say, though, and I'm paraphrasing, but to know your limit, to know when you need to tap out, because if you don't, you do end up making mistakes or bad decisions. Or so it's so important for somebody, especially in this kind of a complex role. Thanks.
For sure.
Ke- Kelly, I want to jump in and I want to talk about something you just said. And I did not prepare you for this, but I think you and I have a good rapport that you would not take offense when I ask this question. But leadership is not just about dealing with the overarching challenges, but it's also about ensuring that you have a good organization that's behind you. You talk about everyone's a cog in the wheel, which is understandable. How much reliance do you put onto your other staff members when you are dealing with two different municipalities? Because when you're in Warner, you have to trust that the people who are in Milk River and vice versa are not just going to let everything fall apart. So how much as a leader in this dual leadership role that you hold, do you rely on your other fellow staff members to ensure that the day-to-day operations doesn't leave on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when you're in Milk River and Warner goes to the sideways, and on Tuesday and Thursdays when you're in Warner, Milk River doesn't go sideways? How much of a reliance do you put on those other staff members in your office?
A lot, like a lot. But until somebody shows me different, I have 100% complete faith in all of them. They were doing their job before I got here. And if I don't see the outcomes that I'm looking for, we'll have a discussion. But again, I'm not waiting for the 1 year performance review time. I'm not waiting for a certain time to be able to talk about these things. And I'm hoping that everybody knows that my door is open and that I want to have constructive conversation, basically. So I trust them until they show me that I can't. And the wheel keeps moving, things still keep progressing, and until the time that I don't see the outcomes, and sometimes I might get pressure from above, or the outcome should be faster sooner than later. But sometimes the reality is that's not going to happen. So it's a balancing act again. But no, I rely on them a lot. And again, I can't speak highly enough of the teams that I have. I don't prefer to call them staff. We're all in it together. So they continue putting forward everything that they need to.
Smaller communities you are finding it harder and harder to find good CAOs who are willing to come in. And I'm going to burst a big bubble here, but CAOs in smaller communities do not get paid the same amount as CAOs in Calgary, Edmonton, St. John's. Just not happening. I just need to put that on the record. So you're
Yeah.
seeing more and more people not going into these smaller communities. But this agreement between Milk River and Warner, and I say you're writing the book, and I know you say you're not, but I'm going to keep on saying it because I think it's true. This could be transposed into Saskatchewan, into Newfoundland and Labrador, where many people are finding it hard to attract these CAOs. What is the benefit of having this dual leadership role that you and the town of the village of Warner and the town of Milk River, I'm going to get that right at least once during this recording, has?
Well, I mean, it is beneficial that there is one administrator looking after two places and a cost sharing with that. The thing that I would caution is it depends, and this is going to be rotational every 4 years. Well, in Alberta, it depends on the will of council. It depends on the makeup of the individuals on council. It depends on the community expectations, ergo the expectations that council has of the CAO. So there's a lot of variables in there. I think that this scenario that's currently taking place, it is working well, in my opinion. But we're up for election come October. I don't know who the players are going to be. I don't know what their viewpoints are going to be. And at the end of the day, it depends on the expectations that council have of their CAO of what needs to take place. Are there times where maybe some expectations are, even though I'm part-time, the expectations are full-time? I mean, just because I'm not here 2 days a week doesn't mean the organization shuts down, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be some clear setting of those expectations up front. Absolutely. And then you just need to sort of figure out how it will work with the players that are involved. If everybody has the same common goal, the same understanding, the same principles, and the same expectations, I think you should be okay. But there's a lot of different areas within that question.
So before I let you go, and Craig and I let you go, I have one final question. What does the future hold for Milk River and the village of Warner?
It's so bright, you've got to wear shades.
That is the best way that I could think of ending this interview. Kelly, I want to thank you from both Craig and myself for both sitting down and chatting with us today. Greatly appreciate it.
No, thank you for inviting me. And no, this was fun. And yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you.
Our full interview with Kelly Lloyd, the CAO of the town of Milk River, Alberta, and the village of Warner, Alberta, will be airing next week. We will be right back after this. Bam! Dual leadership interview with Kelly Lloyd, the great town of Milk River and the village of Warner. Craig are lucky to have Kelly on their teams. And I say that because she's leading both organizations. How'd you feel the interview went today?
I thought it was an amazing interview. Just from a personal perspective, I've never heard of this before. So I didn't know that it existed. I didn't know Kelly was in this role. So I was absolutely fascinated to hear how it came together, how she does it. She's very she doesn't like to brag. I'll say that. She doesn't like to speak a lot about this amazing work she's doing, but holy moly, that's a big dual role to take on. So she should be proud of the work she's doing.
She certainly will be, and we didn't embarrass her too much with the line of questions, but I think she handled herself quite well.
Yep.
But I want to thank you. Thank you for filling in for Ian McCormick for this episode. We will be back in about 3 weeks' time. We'll be back in about May. Ian will be hopefully gracing us again. If not, he'll be flying somewhere else in Canada. But Craig, always a pleasure to chat with you in the political trenches.
Absolutely. Pleasure was all mine. Appreciate it.